Thanks, Simon, and great to be here with you today, and delighted to introduce you to Manuel Pulgar-Vidal, a global leader of climate and energy at WWF, a previous past president at COP, and also a previous environment minister for Peru. Very excited to be talking to him today as we head into COP26 and hear his views as to what might be on the COP president's mind as we come up to COP26, and maybe some lessons from those learned at COP20. Welcome, Manuel. Delighted to have you here today.
Very happy, Kaisie. Very happy to be part of this summit and full honor of being part of this discussion to move our actions towards a strong COP26.
If I can start with maybe a boring question, no doubt one that everyone has asked you already, but as we kind of step into the run up to COP26, we're in our kind of last 150 days. You've obviously been in this exact position. What was on your mind when you were 150 days out? And if you could give any advice to Alok Sharma as he's approaching this final sprint for COP26, what would you say to him just now?
Many things that keep quiet, because to organize a COP and to host a COP by being a president, it is a complex thing in which there are different tasks on the hand of the presidency. Not only the logistics, because that is something for sure complex, mostly this time of pandemics, but mostly how to build confidence within country to get and to achieve what the presidency had expected it must be achieved. That is a key element. And the role of a presidency, it is to build that confidence, to be open, to listen everybody, to make everybody feel that they have something to say, because we are in a multilateral process with almost 200 countries. So everybody counts. That is a key element of a COP. This is not something about developed countries. It is about all the world together to take decisions and to move this process forward.
Great advice there. I hope he's listening as he heads into a very challenging time. I wonder if I might share with you some of our hopes. So us here in Scotland, where I'm sitting and recording, we're very excited that COP is coming to Scotland. And we believe that we have one of the forefathers from our lands thinking about what the role of markets was. And really us at Global Ethical Finance Initiative are really interested in Adam Smith and revisiting his ideals. And I personally feel like Adam Smith has been woefully misinterpreted, and I'm not sure that he would be so happy with the markets trampling all over our environment. And I think certainly from our perspective, we see a need to reassert the moral compass into the markets. I wonder if you have your own perspective on what's facing us from an economics and markets challenge perspective, and if you have your own views similar to those around Adam Smith.
That is a really interesting question, Kaisie, because it is true. And by bringing Adam Smith into the table, we are talking about the hand. But this hand, that it should include some moral consideration. That is a key element. Because when we think on climate, it is clear that we are talking about the economy of the world, and the economy of each one of the 200 countries of the planet. And when we think in that economy, that is something for me that it is extremely important. The world, it is entering into a new economy in which climate considerations are becoming the key element of this new economy. And probably you are wondering why Manuel is saying that, why he's talking about this climate economy. Because there are many elements. And let me use a very recent example. In May the 21st, the Minister of Environment and Energy of the G7 released a statement, what they call a communique. That is one of the most interesting, integral and integrative piece I've ever read. Why? Because they are defining first a clear vision for the world. In relation to climate, a vision in which the net zero economy and resilient economy, it is key by 2050. But also they are going beyond, and they are defining that for nature, we should develop actions to achieve a nature positive time by 2030 and 2050. And they are adding the One Health approach. In a time in which we are living under the pandemic's uncertainty, the One Health approach, it is key. So look, Kaisie, climate, nature, health as three main elements of this new economy. But also they have developed all the tools that are in our hands to achieve those objectives. So it is related to the NDCs or climate plans, to the need to have long-term strategies, so to have every country saying how they are planning to achieve a net zero by 2050. Also, they are talking about some key instruments as nature-based solution. They are talking about the importance of the economy on climate and nature, and they have highlighted the importance of this Dasgupta review that was commissioned by the British government to explain to the world how much climate and nature it is related to the economy and to our development. And let me say something short to finish this question. For those countries that are not understanding that this is about the economy, they will be behind and they are jeopardizing their own development. And that is a key element, mostly to developing countries, because I think, Kaisie, that unfortunately in developing countries, this concept of a new emerging economy, it has not been already adopted. So we should continue pushing and encouraging those countries to take their actions to this new economy that it is framing the new world, in which we are going to leave behind the concept of GDP, and it is going to be more important to measure how efficient it is our economy, the concept of volume of carbon of our exporting product, volume of carbon of our production patterns, among some others. It is amazing. We are in a key time, in a time in which we are building momentum because this new economy is there, and that is important to recognize.
That is such a big concept that you're discussing there, the emergence of a new economy, a different way of thinking, new measures for how we measure progress in our society. But it does feel like lots of these thoughts have been around for a while, but perhaps we're at that point of crystallization. And speaking of crystallization, so back in 2015, we had the Paris Agreement, an astounding achievement from the Conference of Parties. And I wonder, as we head into COP26, can you help us understand what should we be expecting? Are we going to end up with a Glasgow agreement? Is that going to encode this new economy, or are we going to see something different come out of Glasgow? What do you think we should be looking for?
Yeah, that is important. Mostly we are talking on how to move our actions towards a strong COP26. Let me start by saying we shouldn't think that COP26 will reproduce or duplicate what we used to have in COP21 with the Paris Agreement. It is a different time, and we are with different tasks in our hands. In 2015, at that time, President Fabius of COP21, he had a clear, single expected outcome, an agreement. And despite of the complexity, he got it, and the world celebrated in COP21 2015 that agreement. After that, we started the process of implementation. And now we are in that time, the time to implement the Paris Agreement and to achieve their objective. And the objectives are related to the threshold to don't raise temperature in more than 1.5, and the two main objectives, decarbonization and resilience. So the current time for COP26 and for Alok Sharma as president of COP26, it is more as, how can I say, a music mixer. No? So let me use this analogy. It is as Alok has in front of him a big console with different buttons. So the combination and the well balance of these buttons are going to produce a beautiful song, a beautiful sound. So what are those buttons? In my point of view, at least 6 main buttons. The first one, Kaisie, it is the COP26 should address the tasks that they have in their hands. And those tasks are related, for example, to adaptation, loss and damage, to what it is called the Article 6, to define the carbon non-market mechanism to implement the Paris Agreement, to finance in sense of the 100 billion, among some others. But in this first button, I would like to include one more element. This COP should finish in November of 2021 with a clear roadmap for the future. So with a clear legacy that can secure that the next 3 or 4 years are going to be as fantastic as this 2021. So that is the first bottom. The second bottom, it is this COP should continue encouraging countries to finish and put in front of us the new and already enhanced NDC, so the climate plan, Because until now, unfortunately, 60% of countries of the world have not yet put in the table those NDCs. And that should include not only the NDC, but the long-term strategy, because the NDC, it is for the short-term actions to achieve a more ambitious 2030. But the long-term vision, it is to know exactly how they are planning to achieve a net zero economy by 2050. So the combination of two, it is something that this COP should continue encouraging countries to put in front of us. A third element, it is the role of what it is called the non-state actors. You know that we have what it is called the Marrakesh Partnership, in which our friends Nigel Topping and Gonzalo Muñoz from Chile are working as champions to scale up the role that the private sector, the academia, the indigenous people should have in achieving our objectives. So all that, what it is related to non-state actors, it is a key one. A fourth element, it is more related to the convergence. You know, Kaisie, that we're in a time in which we are making converge our climate objective with our objective to address nature loss, in which the UK government it is extremely interested on, plus health, plus economy. So the combination of these four elements, it is something that this COP should address. Then we have finance, that it is a key element also to address our objective, and probably I will take some more time later to talk about finance. And finally, because of this time of pandemics, the Build Back Better concept. So the point of the recovery package. So those are the 6 bottoms in Alok Sharma console, and the combination of those bottoms are going to produce, I am sure, a strong outcome of COP26.
This is a complex business, isn't it? This negotiating at a global level, how we create a future worth living in. And I love the analogy of the mixing desk. I now have a visual of Alok Sharma kind of looking like a DJ with big headphones on and getting ready to mix this wonderful music. So it's taking something that is super complicated and simplified.
Yeah, he could be a great DJ, I am sure.
I think he could too. But it certainly left me with this sense of, you've simplified it magically, but it certainly leaves me with this sense of, I don't know if you've ever played in an orchestra when you were young, but if you get the timing off, or if the tuba player is just in the wrong key, then it can all just go horribly wrong. So I guess there is a lot of stuff just to kind of come together at the same time. Wonderful insights. Thank you. I am going to push you to talk a little bit more about finance. So in my role, I'm one of those non-state actors, really interested in the role of finance. There's been so much discussion about how much money we need to transition, how we failed to meet our financing objectives, and how this is a massive investment opportunity. But you've been at the heart of this for a while, and I think for a lot of people in the financial services sector, and certainly for me, I've been talking about this for maybe 10 years, and normally nobody wants to talk to me. And it's only really over the last 18 months, 2 years, that people are kind of knocking on my door going, hey, do you want to talk about stuff? And they're always really surprised when I talk about the fact that it's COP26. And they're like, oh, why is it called 26? I'm like, because we have been doing this for 26 years. So I think there's this bit of historical knowledge for people in financial services to really wrap their head around. This is not a new problem. This is a problem we've been aware of for quite some time. So I wonder if you can talk to those two things. So just kind of giving us that wake-up call as, financial practitioners, that this is not a new problem and we need to get up to speed quickly. But also, once we've done that, what should we be doing? If you're speaking to financial professionals who are watching us now, what would you be telling them to get on with as part of their homework?
Yeah, in relation that to your part of your question that this is not something new, that's completely true. You know, Kaisie, that probably in the last 4 risk outlook of the World Economic Forum, climate, it has been recognized as the biggest risk of the world. And that is a key element. And everybody knows that, even the financial sector. So when we think about of a new endeavor, a new initiative, the climate risk, it is the first one that we must address. And the financial sector knows perfectly that. But now we have included some other elements, as for example, the phase out of fossil fuels. It is clear how much the world it is defining that we must phase out fossil fuels soon. coal first, then oil, then natural gas. And it is amazing, Kaisie, something that I would like to highlight in this summit, the report that it was released in late April or early May on the the Energy International Agency, the EIA, in which they are saying in our model for a net zero in the energy sector, we are not promoting or suggesting any new investment in coal, oil, or gas. Something as that by the EIA, it is really something strong. And for sure, the EIA is recognizing that we should work in a gradual transition for developing countries, because based in the concept of energy security, still for developing countries, that transition is going to be a bit difficult. But what it is clear, it is that we are going to leave behind those fossil fuels. And also it is related to subsidies. We do need to eliminate subsidies to fossil fuels. So there are many elements that have been part of the agenda in the last 8-10 years. And now it is becoming even more important. But let me go to the other piece of your question, the finance. How can I say big picture? Because also I think that this summit, it is a good way to show exactly what we are talking on. No, exactly what does it mean, this climate finance big picture. Let me start by saying, Kaisie, that in my point of view, fortunately, the climate finance agenda has already evolved in 2 phases, and it is entering in a 3rd phase. So in the beginning, and probably I can go back to 2009, when by the end of COP in Copenhagen, a group of countries signed what it was called the Copenhagen Accord, in which they referred to this new pledge to put $100 billion annually by 2020. So it was a time in which we used to think that climate finance, it was just about funding. For sure, funding, it is important. But currently we know that 100 billion, it's peanuts, because the cost of the transitions are going to be extremely higher. So the point is that, sure, we should continue working on funds, on flows of money, and also to support developing countries to address their transition. But after this funding 1st phase, we move into the 2nd phase, that it was more about transparency and disclosure. So the idea, unfortunately, we have this task force for transparency and disclosure for the financial sector, which main objective it is to have investors opening clearly their portfolios of investment portfolios, to know exactly where exactly they are putting the money. The idea it is that by this transparency, we can know exactly if they are still pushing investment in those activities that we want to phase out soon. So transparency and disclosure, it has become an important 2nd element of the agenda. But now, Kaisie, we're entering into the 3rd phase. And the 3rd phase, it is more related to alignment. And it is fantastic that this is happening. And probably you are wondering what Manuel is referring to alignment. I am referring that the investment portfolio should be aligned to the objective of the 1.5. That is the 3rd phase. So the idea is that the investors, the banks, private banks, multilateral banks, should consider how much all their portfolio it is aligned to a transition to achieve our 1.5 objective by the end of the century and a net zero economy by the half of the century. So that is the big picture in sense of phases. But if we move to also the other part of this puzzle, and we think about climate finance, we are talking about public, multilateral, and private finance. And the reality of the 3 for sure have the same objective, but there are some other realities. For example, what it should be the role of the public sector in climate finance? Policies in which carbon pricing, carbon taxes, it is key. Promotion of green bonds, that it could be sovereign green bonds as UK, as France, among some others. Elimination of subsidies and those kind of policies, but also that it should include the fiscal system. That is something that is still a difficulty that we should sort. How much can we use the fiscal system to address climate objectives? But also it is related to this coalition of Ministers of Finance. Kaisie, it is extremely important to engage Minister of Finance in this endeavor. This is not an issue just for Minister of Environment, as I used to be. No, and I am not misvaluing the role of a Minister of the Environment. But it is more an issue of Minister of Finance because, again, we are talking about the economy. That in relation to the public sector. In relation to the multilateral development banks, it is related for sure to the portfolio. I remember that I think it was by 2019, the World Bank decided not to put one more coin in investment for oil exploration. So those are the kind of decisions that we are expecting the multilateral development banks should take. And the private finance, it should be related to transparency, definition of targets, and alignment. Let me finish by highlighting the priorities that COP26 and its presidency has identified for climate finance: quantity and predictability of finance, delivery of multilateral development banks by clear commitments, mobilize private climate finance, wider fiscal challenges, allocation of climate finance for the poorest countries, access to climate finance, among some others. I think that that agenda, it is a clear one, and I hope that all those elements that it has been identified by Alok Sharma and Mark Carney, it could be achieved. I hope that by pushing the climate finance agenda, we can get to all of those priorities.
I can hear people frantically scribbling notes as you speak. I think you're talking to the right audience here, of financial professionals who are absolutely committed to playing their part in enabling this transition. And maybe just to pick up on this three-phase approach, I think perhaps some of us are just getting our heads around the task force on climate-related financial disclosures and feel like, good, we've done that disclosure job. But what I'm really hearing from you, and it's no surprise to me, is that it's not really just about transparency and disclosure. It's about figuring out how to align investments to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. And I think for those of you who are listening right now, please stay and watch the rest of the panels today, as you will get to hear from the Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change, who have developed a Paris-aligned investor initiative and a version 1.0 of a net zero investment framework. So for those of you who have completed task 2 but not yet begun task 3, stick around and I'm sure they'll be able to explain to you some simple and easy steps that you can take to get on that journey. But coming back to what you spoke about the finance sector, do you think it's fair to say that this COP is like the finance COP? We've got Article 6 still to be signed off. We've got this kind of mobilization of money to align to Paris, and this real kind of coming together of ministers of finance. And they've been talking about a finance pavilion at COP26. Is this the time for finance to step up and really show its stripes? And I guess, you know, in the back of our mind, certainly in the UK, society bailed out the financial sector back in the global financial crash. Is it time for the financial sector to bail out society and help us deliver a future that we want to live in?
It is, and the timing is perfect. Remember, Kaisie, that let me make like a historic description of the current time. I remember when I was president of COP20 in 2014, we launched what it was called the Lima Paris Action Agenda. That agenda aimed to bring and convene non-state actors, so the business sector, into this climate debate and to have them defining targets. Fortunately, that was a great decision, and that evolved into the Marrakesh Partnership, and it is in which the climate champions, Topping and Munoz, are working on. That agenda is organizing our objective by economic sector. So we have the energy sector, the transport sector, the cities, the land use, among many others. And all those sectors are defining good targets. And what it is interesting, it is that they are defining those targets based on science. Because now also we know that the best way to move this forward, it is by having targets well supported by science. And also we know, and that has been a really interesting initiative, that the champions are working in 2 main campaigns, the Race to Zero and the Race to Resilience. So all of that, it is the big picture until now. But we started some years ago to understand that that wouldn't be possible without the financial sector, because we do need to have who are putting the money for developing of economic activities well aligned to the same objective. And fortunately, the financial sector has already started to understand the role that they could play in achieving the objective of net zero resilience and even to address nature loss, because that is also a new element in the financial sector, the objective to address nature loss. And with that, and by moving through those three phases, the first one, funding, then the idea of transparency and disclosure, and now alignment, they are showing their commitment, and things are starting to fit each to the other. So the economic sector, with the money and the flows of money, and with the well alignment of that financial sector into climate. And what it is important also, it is to have the financial sector defining their own targets to their own portfolios, and to have those targets well supported with science. That is why the initiative Science-Based Target for Finance, it is a key one, because it is saying to the financial sector what it should be their behavior in relation to the new target that they must define, I hope, soon. So it is good that the financial sector has started to understand the importance of not only defining those targets, but supporting well with science. And that science-based target for finance initiative, it is showing that commitment. So if we are able to convene more actors of the financial sector, the sustainable equation is going to work. That is key. So the timing, it is correct. And I think that the priority defined by the COP26 presidency, it is the most accurate I can define, because finance, economic sectors, clear vision, it is like the most virtuous triangle that I can imagine. And let me finish by complementing what I tried to say about the nature. On May 27, I am not sure if it was UNDP or UNEP, some of those of the UN agency, released a report on finance for nature. And it is showing how much money is flowing to support nature objectives, mostly through nature-based solutions. And that is also a priority for COP26, to exploit the potential of nature-based solutions to address the climate crisis by using nature as an important tool, for sure, through sustainable interventions on nature. And that is key for developing countries. I am Peruvian. In Peru, the main source of emission, it is deforestation and land use change. Also, nature-based solutions could become the most important tool for many countries, mostly located in the tropical areas of the world. So, yeah, the timing is perfect, and the role that the financial sector could play, it is a key one.
Thank you. And I think that week that you speak of, there was a lot happening. So I think on the 26th of May, we had some quite astounding decisions from across the financial sector. So there was the Exxon AGM, where we saw some board members ousted in favor of climate supporting board members. Activity at Chevron, but also a really important landmark legal case with Shell, where they were taken to court in The Hague and they were overruled, and their energy transition plan was found to be a little wanting. And importantly, the court ruled that it isn't okay to just make profit at the expense of the planet. And I guess for some people, it's disappointing that it needed to go to court and that there wasn't the political structures in place to stop this from happening. But it does seem to be a landmark shift that removes the prioritization of profit over the well-being of our planet and nature. And do you see this having ramifications as we kind of move forward? This is, a big shift in terms of what the big oil and gas players are allowed to do as corporate entities.
Yeah, a lot of ramifications, and probably I can mention three. The first one, it is the new role that justice is playing in this objective. It is interesting because you refer to the Dutch resolution of justice, and this is the second time. Remember that I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when a Dutch judge also made a resolution. I think it was to encourage more ambition of the country. And now it has been about Shell, no? to say that their targets are not enough ambitious. And the same, it has just happened with Germany. A judge or a court in Germany pushed the German government to raise their ambition because of the resolution. So the role of justice is becoming a key element. In relation to profits and social and environmental consideration, it is extremely interesting what it is happening with what it is called the System B. Now, probably you have heard about this System B. So it is this new kind of way to do business in which you can keep the idea of profit because that is not bad for sure. But as part of your social objective, of your purpose as business, the companies are including social and environmental consideration. That is a perfect balance. And I hope that the world could evolve more in promoting System B, the System B as part of the new way to do business. But also, the third ramification, it is related to what we have already talked. We know that we should phase out fossil fuels. So in part of this resolution of the Dutch court, they are saying you do need to work more in promoting renewable energies. The EIA report, Kaisie, referred that by 2050, 90% of the source of energy is going to be a renewable one. It's amazing. So let's imagine in 2050, so in 30 years, most of the source of energy is going to be renewable. And to do that in between 2020 and 2030, we should triple the facilities of solar and wind source of energy. So the transition, the transformation, more than the transition, it's happening. And all this new role of justice also, it is a key one in these transformational times.
Such an inspirational note to end on there. That's fantastic. I think when I think about the change that we need to go through, it can sometimes be quite overwhelming. But then I have conversations with my children and explain to them that iPhones didn't exist when I was young. And they look at me with a strange look on their face as if they can't quite believe that. And that you had to sit next to the telephone and, dial away. So, we have seen tremendous change over very short periods of time. And I think more than anything, the global response to the pandemic has broken the belief that really big change can't happen. It can, it does, and it can often happen really fast. Some wonderful topics there that no doubt some of our panelists that follow us will pick up on. David Pitt-Watson, I'm sure, has many things to say about whether companies should continue to have a social license to operate and how do they balance, particularly in the UK, there are Section 172 requirements and the need to evolve to have more B corporations. From my perspective, working for a mutual, we happily kind of balance out members and profits, and it's wonderful to work for an organization where you don't need to have a business case to do the right thing. But thank you so much, Manuel. It's been lovely to speak to you. Thank you for all of your advice, and I think I will leave the audience with one note and reminder, which is of Alok Sharma with headphones on. DJ Alok, let's make sure that we all play our part in this orchestra, play our instruments well, and then hopefully we will make beautiful music. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaisie.
You're very welcome. Back to you, Simon, and the rest of the day.